From Hine Matov at the beginning.
Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat
Gam Yachad. Welcome.
Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manahim Shabbat Gam Yachad.
Just saying the beautiful word of the psalmist, how beautiful it is, Hine Matov, to sit together, to dwell together, to be together, to feel at home together in our home, which keeps changing all around us with the beautiful art of the children. I hope you feel most welcome back in preschool in this lovely space. We will be migrating to a couple of other spaces in the building as time goes on, but for now it's really nice to have our little home so intimate and joyful and bright down here back at TBT. So I don't think I'll ever get over that. Being back home is very and Hine Matov, how good it is to be together. So we can take this opportunity to reach out to somebody around us we haven't yet said Shabbat Shalom to, perhaps introduce ourselves, wish a Shabbat Shalom to somebody you know or you don't, who you haven't seen yet. And I'll invite the Luke.
My husband got never better you with the
Okay, sound good?
You want to
Candlelighting is on page 120 as we usher in the brightness and warmth of Shabbat. We're glad that the Luz
look for the numbers in the bracket.
Yes, bracket page numbers are the ones that will guide you. If you have brackets, those are the page numbers to look at. If you don't have brackets, don't worry about it.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kisharenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehalikner shel
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we be our lives give light to all who behold us. As the brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own way, be among those who kindle light.
Amen. Thank you very much. Good to see you here and in good health. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, guys. Can I get this one? Appreciate it. We enter Kabbalat Shabbat together with our psalms that raise our spirits in joy. And if the Hebrew words are not the most accessible point for you, that's okay, because these psalms have a lot of repetition, a lot of ooh,
and yada, yada,
a lot of ways to express our joy, even if the words are less familiar, right? Along with Dr. C, so she will lead us beginning on page 130 with Lechun Nirami. Page 131. Sing to God a new song, Shir Ladonai, Shir Chadash. Maybe we can all try that.
Do that again.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth unto God a new song. Do it again. Shir Adonai, kol haaretz. Shir Adonai, shir chadash. Shir Adonai, shir
What a pretty setting. I haven't sung that one in many years. We move now into Lecha Dodi, the mystical poem that brings us into relationship with the mystery beyond, that the mystics didn't like to think of as some big philosophical, elusive theory, but rather a very intimate and warm presence. So everybody think about the coziest thing that you can think about at this time of year. Whatever makes you happy and lifts your spirits when the lights go a little dimmer, a little sooner. Whether it's that fireplace or the stove or the warm embrace of a grandchild at the holiday or whatever it is, that sense of warmth and intimacy is exactly what the ancient mystics were going for. So when these words feel theoretical and Hebrew and far away, just remember that the feeling that they want is right there, right in front of us, even though they didn't live in New England. Page 138 and 139. Ya la 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 lecha dodi.
Ya la 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 likrat kala. Ya la 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 panei Shabbat. Panei Shabbat lecha. Ya la 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 lecha dodi. Ya la 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 likrat kala. Ya la 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 panei Shabbat. Shamo ezachor bediborecha ishmianu el hayuchad Adonai echad ushmo echad l'shem tiferet Shabbat, Lechu Benecha, Hihi Bekol, Haverach, Merosh Mikeder, Nesucha, Sof Maaseh, B'machshava Tchila, Yai Lecha Dodi, Yai Likrat Kala, Yai Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat Lekabela, Mikdash Melech, Yemelucha, Kumitzei, Mitoch Afecha, Ra'av L'Shevet, Be'emek Avcha, Lehu Yachamot, Alayich Chemla, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat Lekabela.
Verse 5, This means awake, awake, your light is coming into being. Shine, wake up and sing. Shir Daveri,
Kevod Adonai, Alayich Nigla.
rise and we turn to face the entrance to greet Shabbat in our midst. Ateret Bala, I'll have a seat. Page 142. Your voices are exciting to my guitar. Your energy is throwing it out of whack. That's okay, keep on throwing it. It's really our bodies collectively that are throwing it into the space.
AJ always say we tune because we can. Page 142.
הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום עליכם מלאכי השרת, מלאכי העליון, ממלך מלאכי המלאכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We rise, page 146, as we begin Ma'ariv with Baruch.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
149, top of the page. We'll read together in English. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season lie. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven stands to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Haravi, page 150.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אתה. תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, ושופטנו ופקומנו, נשיח לחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Shema
Israel,
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai You have a seat. Page 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי V'tem kedoshim Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem, amen. Page 159 in English meditation leading into our freedom song. Would anybody like to volunteer to read this English? Page 159. Please, thank you.
Sing the song of men and women, joined in understanding and respect. The song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content. For soldiers home to leave no more. Song of a world redeemed. Song.
כיפת אדוני את יעקב, וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל.
Amen. Page 164. When you're ready, feel free to rise, but you don't have to do it until you're ready. Just let the melody sink in and sing it along a few times.
Yeah.
Eloheinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו ויאהבם. מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם וחסדיו. 168.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי הכל אתה רב והושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה לחיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל,
ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללו חסרה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We continue in silence from page 170 to page 180. Feel free to complete the words of the Amidah, offer your own silent meditations, whatever the space needs for you, and feel free to stay standing until you're ready to be seated. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimrocha.
הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. ועל כל ישראל,
I am sad but not surprised to see that we have many new names on our Misha Beirach list this month, folks that we're praying for in our broader community. And we have, in addition to all of the many things going around right now, a few people who are struggling with illness within our community. And so I'd like to share prayers that we're thinking of for people who are struggling with a chronic illness or had a hospitalization or a procedure we know are in need of healing. And if that's you and we don't know about you, I hope that you'll let us know as well. And that includes our temple members, Burton Boardman, April Diamato, Norma Diamond, Susan Glantz, Ann Karamenis, Phyllis Kaufman, Josh Lipschitz, Esther Liu, Linda Rosenfeld, Hetty Sussman, and Mark Warner. We also think of our loved ones, Barak Yaakov and Avraham Basara, Barav Chaim Ben Leah, Linda Kaufman, Lenore Shapiro, Connie Ambrosino, Joanne Crusulo, Soraya Casey, Brian Kamens, Steve Kamens, Cecilia Barron, Bernard Steinberg, Steve Rudnick, John Van Steenbergen, Sabine Meyer, Gloria Newell, Roberta Gleit, Barbara Whitehouse, Paul Frisman, Bruce Petroff, Jordan Lustig, Tim Maurer, Enya Fetterman, Sherry Cohen, Joan Sidney, Robert Garfield, David Glazer, Gail Feidelberg, Samuel Feidelberg, Deborah Poulin, Michael Stafford, Ira Weiss, Drew Garabo, and Greg Ripka. And if anyone else here would like to share the name of a loved one for Misha Beirach prayers, I invite you to do so at this time out loud if you wish, or if you're joining us from Zoom, feel free to add their name in the chat box, and I'll be glad to read it aloud. Anybody for Misha Beirach?
Graham Page,
Baron Page,
Steve Lerman, and Bill Pellerin.
Yes, Susan.
Jerry Cow
Jerry Cow,
and Tony Esposito.
Tony Esposito. Others over here, friends, continuing. Anybody for Misha Beirach? And our friends on Zoom recognize Deb Malloy and Marie Peterson as those in need of healing. We add their names to our prayers. We're going to sing a newer melody of Misha Beirach. The words you can find on 371, although not all of the words to this new melody are there. And we'll be singing this a few more times in the coming weeks, so we'll learn it together.
אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, מי שברך אמותינו, שרה רבקה לאה ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer,
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 hear our prayer, and bless us as well. מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, מי שברך אמותינו, שרה רבקה לאה ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer.
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 Hear our prayer and bless us as well.
I'll share just a few words of Torah and the excitement of the Torah portion, which we've been reading in the last few weeks. Stories about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all of those famous Bible stories that many of us learned as kids. I'll do part of what my job is, which is to share a little bit more of the complexity that maybe we don't learn as kids, because these are sometimes some very tough stories. And we do have a couple of kids in here who are definitely mature enough to handle it. It's not always easy to read some of these patriarchal narratives and matriarchal narratives, because it seems that for every heroic deed, we want to think of our ancestors well, of course, and meritorious. We get another side of the story, a tale of woe or conflict or betrayal. Last week in Parshat Toldot, the character Jacob plays the trickster. Encouraged by his mother, he defrauds his brother Esau, not the first, of course, sibling conflict in the book of Genesis. He defrauds Esau out of a birthright and a special blessing that are by rights Esau's as the firstborn. Now they're twins, so it's very close firstborn, but technically Esau is the firstborn. Jacob is his mother Rebekah's favorite child, and he uses that to his advantage as they together scheme against their father Isaac, who is a pretty meek character in the Torah. We don't really know a lot about him. He's a quiet character, a passive character. And they certainly use that to their advantage. When Esau finds out that he loses these birthrights, these rights of his inheritance, he threatens to kill his brother, who then flees to his ancestral homeland. Now, Jacob is not merely a complex character. I would say that he is a broken human being. He is a person who repeatedly does the wrong thing. Does he learn from his mistakes? What exactly makes Jacob worthy of being one of our patriarchs? These are some of the questions that our Torah study group began wrestling with, no pun intended, in our last weekend study. So we were really talking about what do we do with stories like these? Well, tonight I'm going to suggest one clue, which is to be found in Jacob's names. Yes, I say names, not name, because Jacob, like his grandfather Avram, then Abraham, actually gets a name change as part of the story. And as we know, when somebody changes their name, it's usually a pretty significant thing. So Yaakov, Jacob, means heel grabber, hinderer, preventer. He's the second born of his twinship only by seconds, and he comes out, according to the story, you might remember this part, holding on to his brother's heel, presaging his future aim to one day usurp him. His mother's favoritism and his father's passivity make for a dangerous and opportunistic mix. Years pass, and in this week's Torah portion, Jacob goes to marry a beautiful woman named Rachel. But after working for her father for 7 years to prove his worth and merit that marriage, Laban tricks Jacob into marrying his other daughter, Rachel's sister, instead, Leah. And the trickster has now been tricked back. I don't believe that the Bible wants us to believe in karma, but this is definitely a literary device showing us that sometimes what goes around comes around. So Jacob works another 7 years, gains another wife, which was a pretty normal thing to do back then. I'm not suggesting it. So he gains another wife. He finally has now married both sisters. So if you can imagine some future psychotherapist is going to be meeting both of them. He gains another wife, has children with 2 other maid servants, grows his family, becomes tremendously wealthy. He's clearly very ambitious, having gotten this far. And he has the spiritual backup of all of the things that he's usurped from his brother to follow him. So Jacob then, to get back to names, receives a new name later in the story. And does anybody remember what that name is? You're all whispering it because you're so shy, but you're right. Yeah, Yisrael, Israel, right? And I think that this is a story that some of you probably remember. It's one of the good ones. It's been perhaps 2 decades since Jacob and Esau have encountered one another. And of course, back then, Jacob had fled, fearing for his life, and justifiably so. His brother was so angry. And of course, his brother, remember, is really the manly man of the twinship, right? He's the hunter, he's the hairy guy, he's the one who's the outdoors man. And Jacob is more of an indoors kid growing up. It says that he's a Yoshev Ohala, right? He's a guy who likes to stick to the tent while his brother goes out and does all of the hard work. So they have their types, they have their destiny set in motion from the very beginning, according to the biblical narrative. And they encounter one another in a confrontation years later. Now imagine if you were Jacob, what would you expect? But probably a very violent confrontation. Now they're not just 2 brothers and their families, but back in those days, a family was a clan, was a tribe, right? So they have their entire, array of people and probably some military trained people and some, and some property and, beautiful camels and wealth. And you can imagine the scene of 2 brothers who have both become successful in their own right, in their own tribal way, sort of about to come to blows at this very literarily resonant place on the crossing point, the liminal point of a river when they're re-encountering. So what is going to happen? Well, it's a very dramatic scene. And what Jacob does first is he proves himself the coward again. He actually sends half of his camp ahead of him, including women, I think, to maybe, I don't know what, tell his brother that he's trying to show a sign of appeasing him. I don't know exactly what, maybe hiding behind them. But regardless, he does that. But then at night, he has a mysterious wrestling match, a second wrestling match, right? The first wrestling was in the womb, we hear, with his brother, very famously. But the second wrestling match is with a mysterious character called an Ish, which means man or person. But we don't know exactly what manner of person, man, or being this is. And it says that they wrestle all night until dawn, and Jacob ends up winning. He escapes injured but victorious, and he doesn't want to let this mysterious figure, the Ish, go until he's offered Jacob a blessing. So what does the Ish offer to Jacob? A name change. Blesses with the new name, as you all know, Yisrael or Israel, meaning roughly God wrestler. Yisra, struggle, and El, God. So the one who struggles with God, or maybe God struggles for them. But in this case, literally, clearly man means the person who has wrestled with some sort of godly being. And so I wonder if this isn't a shift then in his psyche, because what happens in the following scene is that he re-encounters his brother, and it's not actually that horrible, violent clash that we fear, but rather a beautiful scene in reconciliation. He's about to offer some humility and regret for the way the things were before, and show some deference to God in protecting him. I want to believe that they have a beautiful reconciliation with words, although we don't get a lot of their dialogue in the Torah itself. It's a great grounds for midrash for us to sort of fill in the blanks there. But we do see a beautiful embrace where they hug and they kiss. Although Rashi, very famously, the great commentator, takes the word kiss, vayinak and says, actually, Esau bit him, because that word for bite sounds like the word for kiss. So already the rabbis don't like Esau very much, although as we discussed in Torah study, it's probably not for a very good reason, because he doesn't really do anything wrong in the Torah, quite the contrary. So Jacob's now had a name change, Yisrael, the one who struggles with God and divine beings and humans and prevails. Some part of his life is behind him. Hopefully a more honest and forthright path is before him. He's a person who literally wrestles his demons for blessing. And here's the thing, his name Yisrael becomes not only an important name in the Bible, but our name, the name of our people, the name of our country, right? Israel. It has a very important and crucial place. If you look through the Talmud and rabbinic literature, you don't see the word Jew very much at all, actually. The word Yisrael. That's the way we talk about our people, and it all goes back to him, our patriarch. So his identity, and therefore our identity and our legacy, is a complicated one for this reason, if we really read these stories honestly, because within his story is suffering and manipulation, is probably a history of abuse. I can imagine that Jacob suffered the abuse generationally through his grandfather, who passed on to his father. I mean, think about the story of the binding of Isaac and the horrors that Isaac must have endured. The sort of character he became, the injured man he became, must have made its way into Jacob's psyche in some way as well. We don't know a lot about it because we don't have that many stories about it, but this week's Parsha really implies it, I think. And I think that the other thing that we inherit, therefore, from Jacob is this idea that we too can wrestle curses to become blessings. So much of life is wrestling curses into blessings. We inherit the strengths of the patriarchs and matriarchs, right? We inherit Jacob's resourcefulness, his ambition, his vision, God willing, his success. These are things that we emulate, that we want to achieve. But we also inherit his folly and his brokenness and his mistakes. So I think that we can learn from this, and frankly, it's a lot more interesting learning from this than learning from Superman in the Bible, right? Because he's a real character who goes through real life and does well and does badly. And therefore, we can't ignore that about ourselves either, but we can, like him, wrestle it for blessing. I think that so much of life is that, because so much of life is just tough. We all know that. People will disappoint us. Health and prosperity will come perhaps, but will go, will falter. We'll sometimes not live up to our own expectations or the expectations of people we love. The rainy day that hopefully we plan for will come, regardless of what we plan for or not. And our job is to confront all of these things and more, the pain of the human condition, head on, not to avoid it, or like Jacob tried to do, to trick our way out of it, but rather to accept it and even embrace it and find a way to wrestle it into blessing. Now, I think if you look at the remainder of Jacob's life, it's also a little bit of a mixed story because, well, if we think about the Joseph story, he ends up perpetuating the same sort of favoritism that he received as a child, doesn't he? His favorite, you remember the story of Joseph and the favorite sons, Joseph and Benjamin, fostering that sort of enmity between siblings that sets off a lot of that story. So the rest of his story is not a complete success, but I would say that the second half of his life is much more of a success than the first half of his life. And so I do want to believe that he's learned something and that therefore we can learn something too at any stage of our life. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught, actually, no, it wasn't Heschel. You know who it was? It was Einstein. It was the other rabbi, the other Rabbi Einstein, who was, I think, always a very reverent Jewish person, if not a particularly quote unquote religious person. I think he had a strong sensibility of Judaism in his bones. And he said, this is attributed to him, that there's two ways to live, right? First way that you can live is though nothing is a miracle. And the second way that you can live is though everything is a miracle. And so, although it's not always easy, I think that the second way is the Jewish way. And so I think that's our inheritance. We wrestle for blessing, we look for the miracle, we turn the negative into the positive when we can, and we figure out our way through this life, imperfect like our ancestors. Shabbat shalom. Of course.
That Jacob is actually wrestling with God.
There are a lot of different interpretations about who this Ish is, and one of the interpretations is that it's a malach. It's an emissary, a divine being of God. Another option is that it might be Esau himself, that they have a little bit of a, like hidden from public view conflict, where you know how brothers might have to rumble a little bit in order to sort of work it out, that sort of thing before their big reconciliation. And I think it's Ibn Ezra, great medieval commentator, if I have to look it up, who says basically what I think is the right interpretation, which is that that Jacob is really wrestling with an element of himself that he needs to suppress and claim victory over in order to change and become a new person, a better version of himself, to find a way to merit a new name, to merit the name of being able to subdue that which had actually caused strife within his family before. So that's the way I think about it.
Malbim, I know says that.
The Malbim says that? Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, so maybe next Torah study, we'll look at some of those medieval commentators, and I hope you'll come. All right, shall we move into the conclusion now of our service with Leinu L'Shapeach on page 586. Invite you to please rise and join with us.
עלינו לשבח לדור, שלא עשו הרצון, שלא ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
we can all have a seat, except for Lauren. Lauren Thurman is here to greet us on behalf of our board. You have your announcement, Lauren. I have a copy if you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So here's planning. I have it, I wanted to save paper. So I have it on my phone.
I wanted to
My
waste
phone
paper.
is about to die. So thank you for saving me in this way. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Shalom.
And a warm welcome to everyone here, and it's most especially to people who are guests with us this evening. Lauren Sturman and I'm co-president of Polani, the TBT Women's Group. Tomorrow, join me and several other people for Jewish mindfulness and meditation at 8 a.m., followed by Torah study at 9 a.m., led by Dr. Kasorla. Sunday religious school, Tikkun, confirmation, and J-Chat will all meet at their normally scheduled times. And did you hear? The TBT design team is organizing its next round of small group conversations about the Jewish future here on the shoreline. It's called TBT Connects, and we would love to include your voice. So to sign up, please contact Bonnie Mayen in the office. And for more information about the project, just ask Rabbi Moss.
Or Lauren.
Or
Marlene.
Marlene. And looking ahead, we'll be celebrating Hanukkah on Sunday, December 18th at 5 p.m. And slightly before that, we will be having on December 11th a discussion having to do with the Holocaust in the U.S., the Ken Burns special that ran in September. And we begged all of you to watch it back in September so that you'd be able to talk about it now in December. But even if you haven't seen it, we hope that you'll tune in on Zoom. And we have a wonderful facilitator who's a professor at Yale, David Simon. So I think it's going to be a great event. Next Friday, join us for a special Kulanu Shabbat service at 6:30 p.m. back here at TBT. This is a TBT group focusing on combating anti-Semitism and hate. Again, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi, for having that copy.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I would just in case. Yeah.
And if you still haven't seen the Ken Burns documentary and you want to, it's streamable on CPTV if you have a passport. So if you're a donor to CPTV, you can stream any of those programs, including that one still.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many important and meaningful things going on in a few weeks at TBT. So it's really an exciting time for us. And for our next service, we're going to be back here, I'm almost sure. But just to give you all a heads up, within the next couple of weeks, we are hoping to transition to the other side of the building to our new community room that you probably haven't seen yet. That's brand spanking new and beautiful and a slightly more usable shape for gathering than this, although I love our little imperfectly formed lobby here. And also just for your attention or for others in your lives, we're going to have a mask only Shabbat service 2 weeks from now. Okay, so if you or somebody you know are more comfortable thinking about participating, if everybody is wearing a mask, then we're having a few of those throughout the winter when all of the bugs are about, and we want to make sure everybody will be comfortable with a range of practices. So we now turn in our prayer book and also in our hearts, of course, to thinking of those who are no longer with us. And we do have a number of folks within our congregation whom we've lost in the past weeks, including Henry Gettenberg, husband of Helene Gettenberg. And we think also of Esther Spiegel, grandmother of Andrea McNow, and our longtime member Carol Gubitz, wife of Myron Gubitz of blessed memory, now both of them who passed away just a couple of weeks ago. We also think of Abraham Aron Ben Zev Fischler, who is a friend of Shelley Capozzi, she wanted to mention tonight. In terms of yahrzeit, I invite you, if you are here for a yahrzeit this evening, to rise as I read the name of your loved one. The yahrzeit is the anniversary of a passing this season in years gone by. And in that milestone, we include Walter Jacobson, Leslie Habelow, Harry